In the early 2000s, a concept called calm computing emerged. The goal was to integrate digital information into our physical environments without the intrusive, glowing screens that constantly demand our attention. The height of this era arrived in 2006 with a device called the Weather Wizard. It used an early electrophoretic, or e-ink, display to show a 5-day forecast. Because e-ink only draws power when the physical microcapsules rearrange to update the screen, it could run for a full year on just 2 AAA batteries. The user experience was designed to be entirely frictionless. No Wi-Fi networks to pair, no passwords to enter, and no apps to configure. You simply inserted the batteries, and it silently synced with local airwaves to find your location and download the weather. Then, in late 2019, hundreds of thousands of perfectly functional weather wizards stopped updating, becoming useless plastic bricks. The hardware hadn't failed. The invisible, proprietary broadcast network it relied on to receive its data had been permanently shut down by the parent company. A closed ecosystem smart device is entirely dependent on its external infrastructure. Once that hidden network is decommissioned, the physical hardware becomes inert. To bypass the complex, power-hungry Wi-Fi of the era, the Weather Wizard relied on the Ambient Information Network. This was a proprietary datacasting system that piggybacked on America's existing 900 MHz commercial paging towers. Operating on a one-way push broadcast model, the device simply listened passively for the transmission, without a bidirectional handshake, keeping its power draw incredibly low. But tying physical hardware to a specific radio frequency created a severe vulnerability. If you took a Weather Wizard to Sweden, it wouldn't work. Sweden's national paging infrastructure operated on much lower VHF frequencies, around 170 MHz. Because the Weather Wizard's internal receiver was tuned exclusively to the American 900 MHz UHF band, it was physically blind to the Swedish broadcasts. This local compatibility issue soon expanded as the underlying infrastructure itself vanished. High-speed cellular and consumer Wi-Fi made maintaining nationwide paging channels expensive and redundant, leading operators to decommission them one by one. Relying on a centralized proprietary transmission infrastructure guarantees future obsolescence, regardless of how beautifully the physical device is engineered. Today's successors to the Weather Wizard replace those old pager radios with decentralized open-source Wi-Fi microcontrollers, like the ESP32. This swap creates a significant power challenge. Unlike a passive pager, Wi-Fi requires a bidirectional handshake to connect to a router. That process pulls several hundred milliamperes of current, enough to drain a small battery in just a few days. Solving this requires 2 specific hardware components. The first is a bistable e-ink display. Once the physical microcapsules in the screen are rearranged, it requires absolutely zero electrical power to hold that image in place. A TPL5110 nanopower timer sits between the battery and board to cheat Wi-Fi power demands. It wakes the system, allowing the Wi-Fi chip to pull data. Once the screen updates, the timer physically severs the battery connection, dropping standby current to 35 nanoamps. To mimic the ultra-low power efficiency of legacy passive radio, modern devices must use these aggressive hardware workarounds. Moving from a passive pager to an active Wi-Fi chip changes the data architecture. Instead of waiting for a unidirectional push from a central tower, modern devices use a bidirectional pull model, where the hardware dictates exactly when and what it receives. Because it connects to standard internet protocols, the scope of available data is enormous. The device can pull Spotify playlists, live cryptocurrency prices, or customized smart home sensors. By running open-source firmware, the physical hardware is entirely decoupled from any single corporate server or proprietary transmission network. This creates built-in resilience. If a third-party weather API goes offline, or the company hosting a service goes bankrupt, the device itself remains fully functional. You simply reprogram the microcontroller to point toward a new, active data source, or even host the server locally on your own network. The longevity of consumer technology doesn't come from slick hardware aesthetics or massive proprietary infrastructure. True calm computing that avoids the e-waste graveyard requires decentralized, open ecosystems.